Okay, so Palworld early game breeding guide. So I'm gonna show how to start at around level 20 to get these like Anubis, German Tide, Lylene, Astegon, Orsurks, all those top tier base pals. Just starting from some of these early game pals that you can catch. Just mass catching Chickpea and Lamballs, breeding them together with one early game partner to then chain breed into all the good pals in the game. So I'm going to show a quick breeding tree. So this is what you used to do before they introduced rainbow passives. You would do these kind of trees to just get the pal you wanted. But now that we have these new rainbow passives, if you do want to get those at level like 20, it requires a lot of catching. So what I suggest that you do now is that you do this kind of breeding tree, which is pretty big, but you end up with a lot of good pals on the way to the end pal that you want. So by mass catching Chickpea, like it's not uncommon to have to catch like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 pals. Usually most people get what they want within like 500 catches. But if you're an unlucky person, you can easily catch like 500, 1,000, 3,000, etc. until you see like Demon God, Remarkable Craftsmanship, whatever it is you want. So since you will be using so many spheres, at level 20 it's really only viable just be mass catching these Chickpeas and Lamballs. So what you do is that you catch just a bunch of these using the regular blue sphere, which is the cheapest sphere. And then you breed it together with a Cinema to get Verdash. I think I put another tree here somewhere. So if you get the Remarkable Craftsmanship on a Lamball, you do it with a Penking instead to get Verdash. So going back to that big tree here. You breed this into Verdash, you use the same Cinemat again, or one of the opposite gender, however many you want to catch. You get the Rayhound, you use a Grisbolt and a Vanworm to breed a Mosanda, or you can just catch a Mosanda. It depends on how early you want to start. It can be a little bit of a struggle to catch it, so you can skip this step if you like. Same step here. So usually you go to Sanctuary Island 1, you can catch a Grisbolt and a Petalia, and then some Penking as well, which is also useful base pal. The Asherobe is a useful base pal, so just taking a quick visit there is included in this. You breed the Rayhound, you use the Rayhound, and now this one is gonna have all those passives on it. You breed the Rayhound with the Musanda into a new Grisbolt, which has all the passives on it. You pair that with a Nightwing, and you will end up with a full passive German Tide. Then you pair the German Tide with the Lylene that you bred with the same Grisbolt here. So you take this Grisbolt here, breed it with a Vanworm to get a work speed Musanda. You pair that with a random Petalia, get the work speed Lylene. You end up with a Relaxorus. You pair that with any sort of Grisbolt. You can use the work speed Grisbolt, but this one should also have work speed passives on it. But it doesn't really matter if this one gets the perfect set, because this one will have it from here. You pair these, you get the Orsurk. Same thing here, Grisbolt again, into Astegon. Then you take your Verdash from this previous step into Anubis. So you end up with the 4 passives that you want on Anubis, Astegon, Orsurk, German Tide, and Lylene. And then the Verdash as well, which is just... Verdash is something that is very useful until level 60 when you start using Frostallion Noct instead. So I checked out the paths. This was the path that gave you something viable for gathering on the way. You will end up with like some extra filler pals like Rayhound, Musanda, and stuff like that, Grisbolt. But this was this way that you got the fewest steps from your 4 out of 4 Chickpea or Lamball if you use this one. It depends on which one gets Remarkable Craftsmanship first. You can also just skip Remarkable Craftsmanship and just do this with like Serious, Work Slave, Nocturnal, and Artisan if you want to. You don't have to catch 500 of them. Makes it a little bit easier, but Remarkable Craftsmanship is very good. So then you keep going with a little bit of the same kind of breeding thing. You take your Grisbolt that you had before, so you have this German Tide step from here. It's the same chain up to this German Tide, so it's the same German Tide. You take any sort of mix here, really. It doesn't matter, since this one will have the work speed passives. You can use your work speed passive Grisbolt here if you like, and just a random Daydream from the starting zone into Blaze Howl into German Tide Ignis. It's a bit of a sidestep from this breeding tree, but it's how you get that German-Tide Ignis on the way as well. So we had the, if you get Lamball or if you get Chickpea. It's really which one you first end up with. I don't suggest, you can also mass catch the Cativas, but they always have the red passive, so it's not really worth it in my opinion. Just add some steps to the breeding chain. Then as well, if you do end up with something like Swift, or whatever passives you want, this is a little bit of a thing. I don't think transporters are that important to max out early. I think you would much rather spend the time doing these two trees, but then you probably will have some passives that you might want to breed your transport pals anyway. So you do this chain, Lamball and Tombat into Lunaris, use the Grisbolt into Vanworm, you take the Orsirk from the previous steps here, you take the Orsirk that you end up with that hopefully doesn't have too many passives to bother you. Like save an Orsirk that only has Nocturnal or something. For this, you end up with these move speed Knocklimbs and Vanworms, which are just very good transporter pals. Here's if you got it on Lamball, and here's if you got it on Chickpea. You can catch Incineram at level 10 near the small settlement. I have a separate guide for that. And then you breed that with the Relaxors, Gorerat into Vanworm. So it's really which one of these you get Swift on, I guess. Chickpea or Lamball. And then here are some other bonus pals that I added that you probably want to use. You can go with the Work Speed Anubis, get yourself a Work Speed Doomid, which is very nice for getting high quality pal oil. Work Speed does work in the ranch now, so that's something you want. You get Work Speed Doomid, take the same Anubis, Work Speed Shroomer Noct, Sanity Decrease, and Logging Pal. Not super useful until you get the saddle, but it's something to consider. I'm not sure actually if the saddle is required for the base work. I've seen different opinions, I think. Whatever you want to call it. Some people say you need a saddle, some people say you don't. I haven't tested it myself. Another one, B-Guard and Cativa into Kelpsy. So I think, yeah, I should have put this one first. So you use the Work Speed Chickpea, you catch the Alpha Bushi into a Work Speed B. One max Work Speed B can cover like 15 breeding farms, so just getting one is fine. And then into Work Speed Musarina for the milk for cakes. You can also buy milk, so these are more like optional breeding chains. Take the Work Speed B into Kelpsy for PAL fluids. Here's another one to get the Prunelia. You take the Work Speed Grisbolt, a random Ribbony, early game pal. You can take the Work Speed Blazehowl. This is another option to get the Shroomer Noct. Here is the Prunelia again. Those are just some options. And then here, this is also something I just added because if you do go for a Work Speed Knocklim, you can use that to get like your first really nice flying mount, Ragnarhawk at an early level. And then Shadowbeak, once you do get to that level, you take the Work Speed Knocklim, you breed it with a Foxbark into a Kitsun, or not Work Speed, the Move Speed. So this is for Move Speed pals. The Move Speed Knocklim. And then at that level where you unlock the saddle, you can probably catch an Astegon, or you can just take the one that you had from the big breeding tree earlier in the guide into a Shadowbeak. That's just something of a bonus that you can do. So this is just showing these breeding trees to give you an overview. So if you do know how to like get all these pals set up and going at level 20, you don't need to keep on watching. I am going to be showing just some tips and tricks, the method that I used on how to acquire all these pals at level 20. Just the best farming method as well for farming Chickpea at level 20. So if you're comfortable farming Chickpea and you know everything, you can stop, and I'm going to go on to do some tips and tricks for the setup for doing this at level 20 now. Okay, so I tried to do or make like a little bit of a map to show a general route you can take. Well, not a route really, you can do this in any order you like. There's just like some benefits to doing it in certain ways. So I'm gonna go through it really quickly here, and then I'm gonna show some stuff as well in like gameplay format, or whatever you want to call it. So just, you have the starting zone here where you start. This is where you will end up mass catching Chickpea and Lamballs, but you do that at the end. So generally, what I recommend that you do is that you reach, like probably you want to have the Ring of Mercy, so around level 20 and some Gigaspheres. And on your way to level 20, it really depends. I started at around level 15 by going this route here, kinda. You catch this level 10 Incineram on the way. It's just useful pal for doing all the other stuff that you're going to be doing in this guide. You can catch some Fwak as well. I like the partner skill for fighting some of the bosses and stuff like that. So then I go from here over to this fast travel location, like one of these two, just grab both. They do give some tech points. You catch the Vanworms and the Musarinas. The Musarina is just like, you probably just want to catch 12 out of 12 for the XP bonus anyway. Hopefully you get a blank or one with work speed passives or move speed passives depending on what you want. The Vanworms are just very useful then for having in your base just as transporters generally later. You get some milk to start off, and then you can also put the Musarinas you catch in a ranch for more milk. You're gonna need that for cakes. And then you can have an option to just proceed here. These pals are also pretty low level, around level 15 if I recall correctly. I like to go this way here and grab the skill fruit tree. You got a skill fruit, I hit it a little bit behind Incineram. You got this skill fruit tree and this skill fruit tree. So the skill fruits are just to have an easier time when you're mass catching later. Just try to get something like these short cooldown, like Wind Cutter, I guess. You don't want Ignis Blast or Dragon Cannon because they have the fire aggregate, so you will burn pals even if you have Ring of Mercy, they will die. Just these really short cooldown skills to mass catch with later. Then I catch a Univolt, and you can also catch some Orsox. It's just a nice kindling pal to have to get the first like ingots you need. Making those metal bars can be a little bit slow if you're just using level 1 kindling. To catch these, you can also just buy it, but you're probably not going to be wanting to spend the gold on it. It will give you a little bit of experience as well. So I recommend catching Univolt for the mass catching purposes. It has Shockwave, and then you give it 2 or 3 skill fruits for the other attacks that are short cooldown. I will be showing some mass catching as well just to show what it looks like. Then you grab the skill fruit and you fast travel back. Then you probably want to catch Nightwing anyway, or you already have some Nightwings. It's the level 15 saddle. You can wait until level 21 and use the Vanworm saddle as well. But you probably just want to, you can use either one. It depends how early you want to go down. So you can go fly from here, or you can fast travel from here. Depends how much you have explored as well. Then at Sanctuary Island 1, you want to grab all the chests that you can find. I think there's 11 or 13 chests. You get ancient tech points. You unlock the Ring of Mercy, the grapple, the condenser, all that good stuff that you want. You can condense some cows and stuff, condense some chickens just for more cake material. So what you want to do is catch Penking, just a good mining pal, like a good base worker. You will also use it a little bit in some breeding chains. Asterobe for watering, just catch 1 or 2, just to make some Paldium out of stone if you don't have like a good Paldium source. Petalia is used in the breeding chain, and it's also useful as a base pal when you're not using it as a breeding pal, just to get the cake materials going, just on wheat and red berries a little bit faster. And then the Grisbolt as well. So you catch these, you get the sapphires, hopefully some ancient tech points from the chests. I'm going to be showing that in the video as well. But then when you're done here, you can either just, I guess I don't need to cover everything. So you just fast travel back, run back, fly back, whichever method you use to get back to your base. Then you want to go probably to small settlement and sell those sapphires and whatever schematics you're not going to use. You get a lot of money. Then you go over here. You're probably going to be running this route. You catch whatever you want on the way. If it's nighttime, some Tombat, some Daydreams. You're going to be using those in the chain as well. Grab the skill fruit tree. And then it's optional, as mentioned before, if you want to catch Musanda and the bee, you can do that. But it can be a little bit tricky if you're doing this at a lower level. So what I like to do is go up here, catch a Ribbony, useful as well for one of the breeding chains that I showed. And here is a black market here. I save my second base just to fast travel back and forth until you get a bee. You can also just run back and forth, but at this point your mount is pretty slow probably. Univolt isn't that fast, it's just useful for mass catching. So you can fast travel whatever you want to do to reset his stock and buy the bee. You can also buy some other useful pals here. But generally you want to save that kind of money for buying other things. So I like to buy the bee. Otherwise you have these like imploding bees, it can be a little bit tricky. You can of course catch these pals as well, but if you're doing this at level 19 or 20, it can be a bit tricky. So just buying the bee is nice. By the time you've done some of the breeding that you're gonna be doing, you are probably high enough level to eventually catch the Bushi. Especially if you skipped Arsox, it's nice to have the Bushi. So that can be a little bit tricky to get that one, but it's for another part of the breeding chain. It's not super important. It's something you can save for later if you don't want to fight the Bushi either. And then you have the Cinnamon as well, which is like the starting point. It also drops some honey. You can clear out some of the bristles and stuff nearby to get wheat seeds if you don't want to be buying wheat seeds from the small settlement. So catching Cinnamon. So the main point is to catch the pals that either have work speed passives, move speed passives if you're going for some of those, the route for Van Wyrm and Nocklum. You can do some combat passives or whatever, but just try to keep like 0 passive or only passives that you want pals. You could go for 12 out of 12 just for the experience since you're there. And that's when like you want either green spheres or yellow spheres for catching these pals and this pal and eventually these pals if you're going that route. So hopefully this map is a little bit clear. Like these pals will be all over the place. You can find Tombat all the way over here. Same thing with Nightwing. You can find in the starting zone all the way. It's not specifically here. These pals are here. These pals are here. These are here. And this is just the place where you go to mass catch afterwards. So I'm going to be showing some of this stuff as well. Maybe I did show it. Maybe I'll edit that in while I'm talking. Might make sense. Yeah. So then I'm going to be showing just a mass catching with the Ring of Mercy and the Univolt as well. Okay, so now you should have your Ring of Mercy equipped, you have your Univolt, you got some skill fruits, hopefully you got a couple of good ones to teach the pal. So just use whatever you kind of get. You can get more skill fruits later. Take away stuff like Dragon Cannon or Ignis Blast because they will kill the pal even if you have Ring of Mercy on. So I ended up with one neutral skill, the Power Shot one, and Icicle Cutter. So there are some other options like Wind Cutter and just any sort of short cooldown or air effect skill. And then I like to have the Shockwave that Univolt comes with by itself. Generally, I just use Univolt because it's an early game saddle. It's fast, like it's pretty much as fast as a max Dire Howl. And it has Shockwave by itself at a low level. Later on it learns Lightning Streak, so this is just a really good mass catching pal by itself. So you just run around, you use the Shockwave or the Wind Cutter or the Icicle Cutter, whichever one you have. And then you're going to be catching like a couple of hundred of the Lamballs and Chickapees. And once you do have the passives you like, you can start chain breeding for these base workers and then combat pals if you want to do that. I usually prioritize base workers, that's the chains that I showed in the start. But you can also do this for any combat pal that you want. You can go for something like a Yakumo if you want to have an easier time catching some of the legends with the passives you want. So choose yourself what passives you do want. Like if you do want to go for the Remarkable Craftsmanship, that's probably going to be a couple of hundred catches. It's way less catches to just skip the rainbow passives and just use yellow passives and white passives. And then when you eventually do get rainbow passives later on while just leveling naturally by catching pals, you can just breed that to like a Yakumo and use that to catch a Mastodons and Anubis or whatever. But it's really up to you how much effort you want to put into that. So that's it for this level 20 breeding the best base pals guides. So for now, thanks for watching.